Hello, welcome back. It is episode 100 on Out on That Line. I'm Jeff with my co-host Alex. As always, Alex, how you doing this week, buddy?
I'm a little embarrassed, Jeff. It's our 100 episode anniversary, and I didn't get you anything.
Well, what I got you is a surprise, so you should feel terrible. Yours is in the mail, so congratulations.
I will look forward to that. If there's one thing I love, it's feeling like an a-hole.
Well, it's just a big old pile of shit in a box. So.
Nice.
Well, Alex, we have an announcement to make. Did you want to let the people know what we've got going on here?
I guess so. And this is said with a heavy heart, but unlike Tom Brady, you need to realize when it's time to pack it in, and you need to go out on top before you tarnish your legacy. And I like to think we've built a pretty solid legacy on the show. And therefore, Jeff and I are announcing that this will be the last episode of Out on That Line podcast.
It's bittersweet, really. We've done this for so long, but the goal was always to get to 100 episodes. When we started this thing, it wasn't about the followers. It wasn't about the money. It was 100 episodes was the only thing. It's still on the whiteboard in the room that I recorded, and so it was the goal. It was our mantra, and we did it.
We did it. I remember when, peak pandemic, you pitched me, you were like, let's do a music podcast. I said, Jeff, I'll do it under one condition. We do 100 episodes and then we dump out.
And now that the pandemic is over, it's pretty perfect.
The timing could not be better. It doesn't get any better than this.
Well, folks, we're lying about that. You're not getting rid of us. We're going to keep doing this show. This is episode 100. This is a big time episode, and it can only be met with some big time news and a big time album. So the news first, as always, we're going to talk about that YouTube. We're going to thank everybody so far that has subscribed. Make sure that you go there and subscribe if you haven't already. So if you're listening to this on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or one of those other stations, you can find us on YouTube as well. Make sure you click that subscribe button, little bell. Tell you when we post things. We're pretty regular on there, It's like a healthy bowel system, We're pretty regular. And we like to post things every single week, podcasts every single week. So make sure you get on there. Let us know what you want to hear as well. And is there anything that you're excited about on the YouTube coming up, Alex?
I'm just excited for 2023, if I can be honest. There's no reason why people shouldn't be jumping on board right now, because when 2023 hits, we're going to have all kinds of new content coming out.
Yes.
We're going to have new series. We're going to have a brand new slate of albums. We might even, I heard it through the grapevine, that we may even go full video for this podcast.
Holy cow.
I neither want to confirm nor deny. I guess you'll just have to go to the YouTube, subscribe, turn the notifications on, and wait patiently for the next big thing in Out on That Line history, and it can only be found at youtube.com/C/Out on That Line.
My God, that was beautiful. I feel like, did you tattoo that in the back of your eyelids? You just got it down.
I just go into a fugue state and just something comes out.
The proverbial in the zone.
Absolutely. Unlike Tom Brady, I watched his piss poor performance tonight. Even though they beat the Seahawks, it was by the skin of their dinks.
Somehow, it fell ass backwards into another win somehow.
Yep, death, taxes, and Tom Brady getting a break he didn't deserve.
We could do a sports podcast, but we only just say bad stuff about the people in sports we don't like.
I would love that, especially because I'm ill-informed when it comes to sports. I barely understand the rules of most sports. So fuck it.
We just get on there, embrace the rage, and go from there. People respond to emotion.
Skip Bayless made a whole career off it.
That's true.
Off being wrong about everything.
And super wrong about so many things all the time.
So why not?
Well, what do you say we get to... And I got to say, this is like a classic Out on That Line band. We've talked about them all the time. We've done so many albums by them so far. And of course, it's the Arctic Monkeys and their new album called The Car. So you ready to talk some monkeys, Alex?
Let's talk about the car.
So for folks that aren't familiar with the newer state of the Arctic Monkeys, or not familiar with the Arctic Monkeys at all, they're from the UK. fantastic rock and roll band. Absolutely, like one of those when the Foo Fighters get so much credit for like carrying the torch of rock and roll, and people don't mention like Queens of the Stone Age and Arctic Monkeys as doing the very same thing. I would always get pretty upset by that. My fiance, huge Arctic Monkeys fan. They have taken a sharp turn from their previous albums. They had what I think 5 or 6, I'm not sure, up through like AM. They were just like a straight up kind of grungy garage rock sounding band, but they could fill arenas with that sound. It was like just very singular sort of energy that they had. The last 2 albums, Tranquility Base, Hotel and Casino, as well as this one, The Car, are drastically different than the rest of Arctic Monkeys. That is, I think, the first thing that needs to be said when you go into this album is do not go in there expecting that you're going to get anything like older Arctic Monkeys.
No, and I dare say this album is the death knell for that sound. Never say never, but part of the thesis of this album is say goodbye to the Arctic Monkeys you knew. Because the story behind this is Alex Turner, lead songwriter, went through like a 2-year period of writer's block. And then one day he watched the movie 8.5 by Federico Fellini. It's this like surrealist masterpiece, Italian filmmaker. Great movie, super weird. He watched that and all of a sudden he was filled with inspiration. And he went off and he wrote Tranquility Base, Hotel and Casino, which has this very like classic, something I also hear in The Car where it's like a Bond film. It's like the soundtrack to a Bond movie. Very 60s.
Had the exact same reaction.
Yes. Very elegant, very suave, very much of its time, but also infusing like a lot of modern themes. So it's very interesting. And the approach on that one was way more from a standpoint of, oh, isn't this cheeky that we've decided to do this? I bet you weren't expecting this. Isn't this fun? Oh, tee-hee-hee. But then on The Car, the joke is over and they go, just kidding. We were actually serious. We weren't doing that ironically. This is the new sound moving forward. So you like it or you don't. And I'm curious. I don't want to misquote you, but I feel like you said you did not like Tranquility Base, Hotel and Casino.
I did not like that album. Not really any bit of it. And I can usually... Like I'll admit I'm not like the hugest Arctic Monkeys fan. Definitely have listened to them a lot more since I got together with Marla, but I go out of my way to listen to them now. You know, like the Suck It and See album, AM, is fantastic. I feel like there's a lot of diehard Arctic Monkeys fans that will be like, oh, of course you like AM, because it was the one that really like broke them out. You know?
Right.
They were just fantastic, just very inventive guitar riffs, very inventive like lyrics, a lot of tongue in cheek kind of humor. Like just extremely aimed at me, you know, as far as like the music that I enjoyed. It was heavy enough that I felt like I was, you know, getting my blood flowing. It was aggressive, but it also was just a little more clever than a lot of other things that people were putting out. And I think that's why they found so much success. So when I listened to Tranquility Base, Hotel and Casino, and it was basically just like a jazz lounge album, you know, and I'm like, could not separate Arctic Monkeys from like the past Arctic Monkeys and like juxtapose that with the current one and have it make any sense in my mind. Just couldn't do it. I'm like, this is not the same band. I certainly respect any artist that wants to just do what they want to do, but I don't have to like it. And I did not like that. Now, I think you'll be surprised to learn that I liked this a whole lot more. I thought this was different enough from Tranquility Base, Hotel and Casino. I think this was more rooted in like, it was more whimsical, I think, overall for me, just the instrumentation that they used and everything. I found it more appealing. Now, not saying I loved it, but certainly more appealing than Tranquility Base, Hotel and Casino was.
That's so interesting because we're almost entirely the reverse. I really, really liked Tranquility Base, Hotel and Casino a lot. Huge departure. But I was like, oh, this is fucking cool that they want to make this change.
Yeah.
I was very interested in it. I loved it a lot. And I enjoy The Car. I wasn't sure how to feel about it at first because I listened to it in the car on a drive back from Girlfriend of the Pod's house. I have a 3-hour drive. And I'm like, cool, I'll listen to this. And I remember being like, this is interminably long, and it just like whines and whines and whines. And I just like, I think it learned a lot of the wrong lessons from Tranquility Base, which is that it kind of doubled down on the sound and the style, but it doesn't have the same weird factor as hearing it for the first time. So I think maybe they overplayed their hand. But the thing that I will say about this album is you need to listen to it with headphones on, good headphones, when you have nothing else to do but focus on it and sink into it. If you do that, it is a really, really rewarding listen, warts and all, because this is an incredibly flawed album, but very enjoyable.
And I think the sound of the album was far more enjoyable than when I actually started paying attention to like the lyrics and everything, because I think the biggest problem, like I've got no problem with jazz. It's not a music I'm going to go out of my way to listen to. I think what made me actively not like Tranquility Base was that the lyrics just were just so up his own ass. You know, the thing about Alex Turner is I'm pretty sure he's a huge jackass. Like I'm pretty sure he is a wild asshole. He's really good friends with Josh Homme from Queens of the Stone Age. That's why you'll hear a lot of kind of similarities between Arctic Monkey sound and some of Queens of the Stone Age stuff. Queen's definitely way heavier overall, just consistently. But there's some similarities in like messing with time signatures. That really like low down, gritty, dirty guitar like has a very similar sound between both bands. They also apparently have very similar kind of personalities. Maybe Alex Turner isn't quite as volatile as Josh Homme is, but if you're willing to hang out with Josh Homme and think he's a cool dude and he can produce your albums, you probably have a few things missing out of your kindness yourself.
Well, and Alex Turner was really young when the Arctic Monkeys kind of blew up, because I remember in high school it wasn't Oceaga, because that's Canada. What was it? God, it's a UK music festival. Oxygen, maybe? O2.
Yep.
O2. Arctic Monkeys were playing O2, and Alex Turner couldn't go to any of his own after parties because he wasn't 21.
Oh.
So he definitely came into fame young. I don't know how old the other members of the band are. So I can see that, kind of impacting your worldview and your level of like self-professed genius. Now, truth be told, on my end, I haven't seen an interview with Alex Turner. I haven't read any. I couldn't tell you what his personality is like, truthfully. But I will say, like, whereas you were like, the lyrics were kind of up their own ass, I found the lyrics actually like very entertaining and very clever and very funny. They were a lot like that on Tranquility Base, and they were a lot like that on The Car. But it's funny without... It's funny, but it takes itself seriously. The Car, especially, as an album, took itself a lot more seriously. And whenever it's being funny, it's not making fun of itself, and it's not being like poo-poo humor like Frank Zappa. We'll get him in early this time.
Hey.
So I actually kind of appreciate the lyrical content and like the way that things are phrased. Like, who else could take 2 lines to describe something that like you just simply want to say, I was watching TV. But instead, he has to say something about written in noble gas-filled tubes to describe neon.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You can just say neon, noble gas-filled tubes.
Yes.
And that is so up its own ass, which is why it's so funny to me. But, that's my interpretation.
It's, he's doing what you do in college, where it's like you gotta do 1,000-word essay. It's like gray all of a sudden turns to like a mixture of black and white.
Yes.
It's
I
like,
used to do a trick when I had to title an essay. I would call it whatever it was. It would be like King Charles II and his reign, a rope of sand. Everything where I wanted it to sound cool, I would call it a rope of sand. I did like 9 papers with that as a subtitle.
We should just subtitle the whole podcast out on that line, a rope of sand.
A rope of sand. Very different from shooting pool with rope, just so everyone knows.
That's tough.
It's tough.
To do.
So I have a question for you about the vocal stylings on this. Where did you fall? What
Hated
did you
it.
think? You hated it?
Hated it. Hated it. Hated
Yeah.
it. Hated it. Hated it. Hated it. I think it's the music was very good on this. I got a ton of like Sergeant Pepper's on this one, especially in what was it? Body Paint, I think, is the one that's like got like very much has those kind of like big, bright, almost orchestral sort of movements in it.
Yeah.
And I really enjoyed that, but like at no point did the lyrics have like anything that I really wanted to hear or could really understand where he was trying to come from. And a lot of it just, and this is going to sound like so simple of me, but like a lot of it just didn't rhyme. It just didn't have much of enough of a structure to it. It was so freeform. And I usually don't really like knock people for that because there's a lot of music that I listen to that tends to go that way, like that outlaw country. Sometimes they don't really sing on the beat. And for some reason, it just really bothered me on this album. I just could not like get past that part of it. I really did dig in. I enjoyed the music a lot. I felt like the album overall moved along very well as far as, kind of how the music went with it. But every time I got myself like, okay, yeah, I can get into this, like he started saying some other bullshit.
Well, and I agree, because something like Black Midi, which is the album we like briefly did a couple episodes ago, I think the Mountain Goats episode. Yeah. But Black Midi did that thing where it didn't really rhyme and it was a little stream of consciousness. And that was really interesting. But there were times in this album, first of all, Alex Turner is doing like a very like flimsy Bowie type thing, where it's sort of doing that kind of delivery. Ugh. And that is interesting in novelty, I would say, all throughout Tranquility Base, if that's how you want to do that, but then bringing it back for the car and doing it the whole time. I'm like, we might have overplayed the gimmick a little bit here, especially because he can't really stay on pitch in a lot of places, and it affects like how able he is to hit notes. It doesn't bother me as much, but when it got tough is exactly what you're saying, where it just meandered on these streams of consciousness when he really needed to pull back. You can only do one or the other. You can do your weird Bowie voice if you're going to have like a very structured lyrical set, or you can try to sing kind of normally and do a lot of the lyrics reminded me of the Bob Dylan parody in Walk Hard. Mailboxes drip like lampposts in the twisted birth canal of the Coliseum. I'm just
Didn't
like,
you say something about rubber ducks too, or something like that?
I forget. I just remember one of my favorite lines is, "We're so unlucky and stuff. Woodrow Wilson never had it so tough."
We should do like a mystery science theater of Walk Hard, the Dewey Cox story. It's music.
I love a good music biopic, but they all follow the same beats. So Walk Hard, God bless Jake Kasdan and John C. Reilly just came in and they were like, let's do it.
Yeah, just fantastic all around.
I love that
fantastic movie.
Unreal. When we do Out on the Line at the movies, like that's one of the ones we'll do. Eddie and the Cruisers, Walk Hard.
Oh yes, the long lost Eddie and the Cruisers episode.
Yes,
it's our season hell now.
Yep, that's true. On the dark side.
Good for us. With this album, I mean, I just really got the sense, and again, this is definitely like personal bias because I really didn't like the album previous to this. I just get the sense that like he really does think a lot of himself in his abilities as like a lyricist and a singer. And again, like the reason I loved Arctic Monkeys before, because it was like basically you just had a bigger, better garage band. So they had those lyrics fit with that. It was very like punk sensibility that they had in that music. So that kind of tongue in cheek, like look at me and how great I am kind of thing, like went very well with that. It meshed very well. Like he's like, hey, why doesn't everybody sit down? I'm going to play everybody some piano and you're going to listen to me sing these songs. It just seems like it's not the Arctic Monkeys. It's the Alex Turner show. And I suppose it probably always was. It just didn't seem that way and so apparent until now.
Yeah, and it again, not really knowing how they structure their songwriting and the division of labor in the band. How on board were all the other members with this, especially because one of the, like, I would say the overall thesis of the album is the album. It's an album about itself. Like, I know I'm giving it a lot of credit and being like, how metatextual, but it really is kind of defending its own existence in a lot of spaces and being like, this is the new me. You need to accept it or you need to get the fuck out. I will not go back to what I was. And sometimes that's said fairly explicitly and sometimes it's not. And I think it's interesting to like really plant your flag right like that, because I personally think the time will come where they will tire of this. There's only so much you can do with this like cinematic 60s bossa nova sound, because it's such fidelity to how it sounds and you're not really putting a new twist on it. The most modern that this album gets is the instrumental section of Body Paint.
Yeah.
That is like the most modern sound you're going to get. I mean, thematically, like, I can't remember which song it is, but there's like lines about like retinal scans and stuff. So that's very modern, unless you're looking at it from the like Thunderball Bond film type thing, where it's like futuristic jet age kind of stuff, which I think is gimmicky if you want to like move in the like very period appropriate jet age type aesthetic. I think it's way more interesting to have this old school sound and talk about modern things. But I think that's one of the problems, is the car is like all over the place with that. It can't really decide if it's going to remain like firmly planted in the concept or if it's going to like dip into some more modern stuff.
Yeah. And it just, it just seemed to be trying to do way too much. Like, it was trying to have this really deep cerebral level of lyricism on there. And just to go back to what we were saying before quickly about the credits on the songs, I think it's as you would expect. It's written pretty much strictly by Alex Turner. Vocals, Alex Turner. If there's composing on the song, it's Alex Turner. I think he is, in like, to his credit, I think he is the driving creative force and kind of always has been. I think the other guys are very talented, but as far as Arctic Monkeys, I think it's always been, might as well just be Alex Turner. But I think you're exactly right in saying, like, where can they really keep going for this? I hope they get sick of this way faster than they got sick of doing the fucking awesome stadium rock and roll they were doing for a decade prior to it, you know? I don't understand what he's trying to really tell us, other than he's like, I want to do something different that puts more of the focus on me.
And fair point. And I think a way that this evolves and survives is, if you want to have your cake and eat it too, and you want to keep up with this sound and this aesthetic, it needs to evolve in real time. And by that, I mean, you need to drive this sound into a more 70s oriented direction. It's very 1960s. So I think you need to push it in a more 70s direction. What scares me about that is it might be the wrong 70s, because if you push from this, and you're going to hate this, if you push from this into a
Don't
more
say
like
disco.
Steely Dan.
Oh, even worse. Oh, I thought of the worst one with disco.
No. If you push from this to the next evolution, which is a Steely Dan kind of Marina Rock-esque sound, that's like a logical progression that I think people can follow. But if you do like hippy-dippy psychedelia, I take that back. Actually, Arctic Monkeys doing psychedelia would actually be pretty fucking cool.
Yeah.
So maybe do that instead. But I feel like if they're really married to this sound, if Alex Turner is very married to this sound, it's going to move in the Steely Dan direction, which I am fine with if you crush it. But they were notorious studio perfectionists. And a lot of this album, I'm not saying it was lazy. I'm not saying it was sloppy, but it did miss the mark in a lot of places. And like, that shit would not fly with Donald Fagen and Walter Becker. So beware in trying to reach those heights.
Absolutely would not fly with those guys. Not a bit. I hope that doesn't happen. God, that would be terrible.
I mean, I would get some level of enjoyment out of it, but I think the psychedelic direction, like as soon as it came out of my mouth, I was like, wait, that's not a stupid idea. That's great.
Yeah,
I would really like to
would
see
be
them
awesome.
move into that. Yeah.
Like a heavier Pink Floyd? Hell yeah.
And that, I think, would be a great compromise between this and their old sound. So, like, you mentioned Sgt. Pepper, like, maybe kind of push it more in that direction.
Yeah.
Let's
Like,
see what you get.
it's just do something, because where they got cooking, like, so Body Paint was one of the songs where I was like, I actually liked listening to that song.
Yeah.
And I wasn't really paying attention to the words, but that one was one where he actually sang it in a way that I was like, hey, this is good. Why wasn't there a lot more of this? Because that falls late enough in the album that you're like, you know what you're in for with the whole thing. And then that one happens, you're like, hey, that was pretty good. Like, clearly that can happen with this genre, so why didn't he just do more of that?
And it even though we both said we like this, we're doing a fair amount of beating up on it, but I think it's an album that lends itself to that because, again, it is very ambitious, but it is very flawed. There is a lot of passion. There's questionable execution. And I think it's fair to say that when I am net positive on the album. I don't know if I have a third one in me without some real like noticeable change. It doesn't have to be. I mean, if they went back to the original sound, which all these songs, like especially like "Hello You," is a song that seems like very averse to ever going back to the way that they used to sound. I personally think like making that promise is setting yourself up for failure.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I need to see something on whatever they do next that is split the difference or in a new direction. I don't think you can sustain a third album of this.
Well, I think so. When I went to, I went and saw them live. I can't even remember. It was right after Tranquility Base came out. It was the tour they were doing for that album. So it was at 2018. I don't even remember. So they played several songs from that album, but they only had the one album of this genre of music that they were doing now. So the response from the crowd during those songs was like, I remember clearly not great, because it really, you go from like, Don't Look Now because I Moved Your Chair, and then you go right into one of those songs, and it's like such a drastic emotional, like whiplash moment you have in a concert like that. Because at one moment you're like throwing your fist in the air, like trying to get a mosh pit started. And the next moment it's like he's sitting down at a piano playing this slow ass song, and it's like, man, so live shows with them going forward, now they have 2 albums full of this. So like, are you going to really even get any of the old Arctic Monkeys? And if they really hate that sound, why are they going to continue to play it?
Yeah, I want the old stuff. You bring up an excellent point and an important point, which is you do have to think about, I think you tour the album and you do not play, maybe for an encore, you come on and play like, and this might piss people off too, but like a jazzed up version of I Bet You Look Good on the Dance Floor or something like that. But I don't think, no, you absolutely cannot mix in like post AM Arctic Monkeys with what came before. You cannot mix those in at a concert. That is such whiplash. But also weird. Like going to an arena to listen to Tranquility Base in the car would suck. Like it's music that lends itself to a far more intimate setting. Like if you play a place like, this will not mean anything to anybody that doesn't come from Burlington, but the Flynn. Like how many people do you think the Flynn seats if you have to ballpark it?
1,000, maybe 1,200.
Sure. And that would not be financially viable for Arctic Monkeys, I bet, because they're still a money-making entity. But that's the kind of place where that music would be appreciated by everybody sitting in their seats.
Yeah, they couldn't even play Higher Ground. They're way bigger than that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But that's what the sound kind of lends itself to. You can't have a bunch of people standing on their feet with beer and paper cups listening to goddamn, Mr. Schwartz off this album. As good a song as it is.
And that's the thing is, when I was able to finally kind of like separate what I love about Arctic Monkeys and just kind of appreciate this album, it's like definitely better than Tranquility Base for me. And I think that's like, I don't think I'll ever change my mind on that. I don't think I'm ever going to like that other album.
Sure.
This one had enough songs on it that I liked, and I'm not going to give it a stream it. I'm going to say skip it just because it didn't cross that bar for me. But it wasn't nearly as far off from that as Tranquility Base would have been if we reviewed that on the show.
Okay. That's fair, because I try to look at it from the perspective of like a a dyed-in-the-wool, die-hard Arctic Monkeys fan, which I am not. I enjoy them. Cannot claim to be an expert. As a quick sidebar, what did Fiancé of the Pod think of Tranquility Base and then this?
So she loved Tranquility Base, and I don't think she's given this one a full run through yet because she had her bachelorette party. I was gone for a while, so our dogs are, when it's 3-on-1, when one of us is gone for any reason, it's a tough scene in here.
Oh yeah, you're on the ropes big time. So I would be curious when she gets a chance to hear what she thought, because I'm in the same position where it's like Tranquility Base was a really interesting breath of fresh air. The car, while I liked it less than Tranquility Base. And there's a quote in the song Mr. Schwartz that I would like to read. Mm-hmm. If we guess who I'm pretending to be, do we win a prize? Having attempted twice, both incorrectly, do we get a third try? And the way that I interpret that is Tranquility Base comes out and people are like, what the fuck does this sound like? Because this is not Arctic Monkeys. What are they trying to do? You can't get your head around it. Then the car comes out. What is this? What the fuck are they trying to do? I don't understand this. Like trying to put it in a box and explain what it is and contextualize it because it's so different from everything that's come before. So that line, having attempted twice, both incorrectly, do we get a third try? That to me portends, yes, there will be a third album in this vein. And it spooks me a little bit because if you keep moving in this direction without like a nice, refreshing change of pace, you're going to lose me. You're going to lose me. And I am highly influential on YouTube.
We are highly influential. There's at least maybe 50 or 60 people that are going to listen to this on the first day.
Yeah. And they're going to say, damn, these guys told me what to think. And I appreciate that. So if you want to know what I think, you said skip it. I am going to say, if you hated Tranquility Base, definitely skip this. If you liked it or you didn't hear it, I would say stream the car only with headphones on when you have nothing to do. If you are listening to this while you're, cooking, you're doing meal prep for the week, or you're listening to this on your commute, don't do that. You have to listen to it in one unbroken block. It's 37 minutes. It's not a huge commitment. One unbroken block. If you participate, you smoke a little of the good stuff. It doesn't hurt. And just make a little evening of it. And I think you'll have a good time.
It was a much different experience, car versus headphones on this one.
Yes.
And I mean, that's the case a lot of times, but I think this one especially was that because it is a quieter album. Like there's some parts that get moving and grooving a little bit, but overall it's pretty mellow, pretty quiet album. I'm going to say skip it, but if you loved Tranquility Base Hotel and Casino, you're probably going to like this one just fine.
Yeah, it's probably right on the money. I don't have much more to say. I don't have anything more to say to you.
I don't have anything more to say. I think we got a nice tight one here.
Yep.
So yeah, we'll just dump out of here. Till next time.